Hello everybody, this is Taurus Tracker here. Today I've got two guns from Taurus on the table from the Trackers series. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. You'll find a link that you can sign up for Big Daddy Unlimited. They actually have things in stock and usually at a lower price than other places. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. Thank you. These are both chambered in either 22 LR or 22 Magnum right from the factory, so there's nothing you have to do other than the factory option comes with it as part of a field strip. You can change the cylinder and you can either be 22 Magnum or 22 long rifle, and that's true of both of them. Now these guns look different, but they're the same series, so they're a 992, and the Tracker comes in a number of calibers: 17 HMR, the 22s that you see sitting here on the table, 357, 38, and then 44. Interestingly enough, the 44 one doesn't mention special on the website, but typically if you can shoot 44 Magnum, you can shoot 44 special. These are both fun guns. They hold 9 rounds. They're not light, they're not small, they're not particularly designed for concealed carry. These are more range guns and fun guns. But if I were going to use 22 Magnum for concealed carry, it would definitely be a revolver, because it's going to be more tolerant of a round that fails to go off. You just pull the trigger again, kind of rotate the cylinder around. Both of these have a few features. The front sight, you can see as we're going by, has a little pin on it, so you can replace the front sight. One of them has a glowing orange ramp, and this one here that we're going by has fiber optic. And both of them have adjustable rear blackout sights. The black gun, the larger one, has kind of a white ring around it, kind of a white U, made it a little easier to see the sights. And the other one was just a blackout, made it relatively difficult to see. So let's go ahead with the fact that both of these are unloaded. And that one is unloaded as well. Now this particular one, the size is still on their sight. This is a 6.5 inch, so it's 11.2 inches front to back, 5.3 inches tall, 1.5 inches thick with the cylinder end. You can see the flares where the cylinder would be. It holds 9 rounds and it's 46 ounces, so it's a heavy gun. The shiny black one that you see right here is no longer on their sight. They're all matte black. The stainless one is still on their sight. Now the shiny one really looks nice until you touch it. In fact, the cat walked by, so I think there's now a smudge on this gun. It picks up every single smudge, so you're constantly cleaning it. So it's kind of like a black car. It looks beautiful when it's cleaned and waxed, but the instant you start using it, it gets all smudgy, and it actually looks like the finish is damaged, but it's not. It's just the way it reacts to being touched. That might be why they don't have the shiny one anymore. They may have got complaints about that, but it is actually a very nice looking gun, and if you keep it clean, it's nice looking. This particular one has this ribbed rubberized grip. It's comfortable. It kind of feels weird though because it's squishy. So when you squeeze it, kind of collapses in your hand, but it is comfortable, and I could see this being very useful on the larger calibers to absorb the recoil. But interestingly enough, the one caliber this would be most useful on is not on the 44, so I would use it on the 44, but it doesn't come with this style grip. It's got a different grip. This particular one has a wooden grip instead of the far more common rubber grip that's on the other one. And this is nice looking, and it's actually quite comfortable. And in 22, especially with a gun this heavy, with or without 22 Magnum, the recoil is insignificant. So there's no reason to not have this grip if you find one that comes with it. Both of these are older guns that were lent to us by a local viewer, but the Tracker series hasn't changed significantly. Some of the grip options, the finish options, the sight options may have changed, but overall the Tracker series is still basically the same. Since I happen to have this one in my hand, I'm going to load it with snap caps so that they're inert dummy rounds to protect the firing pin. This is a 22, you don't dry fire 22s, and also this is a gun we don't own, so I'm going to not dry fire that. This one happens to have the Magnum cylinder in it at the moment, but from a dry fire perspective, the bodies are the same. When you're doing live fire, it is important to make sure you have the correct cylinder in. So push forward, the cylinder comes out. That operates very smoothly. And then the ejector. Now we did have some problems with the ejector on both of these guns with live fire, that when it was full, and it didn't want to move. You had to kind of hit it or start picking rounds out. But the individual rounds had not swollen and hung up, because I was able to reach in with my finger and just flick the individual rounds out. When I had enough of them out, it would work. But also, if I just tipped the gun up, then most of them would fall out and then the ejector would work. So I think when the way it's coming in from the center, it's probably pushing the rounds out, kind of flaring them a little bit and making them hang up. But overall, the gun otherwise functioned well. I'll go ahead and load up with snap caps. It's a little difficult making it where I can do it with you seeing it, because at this point the cylinder is on the other side from me, so I'm having to use the monitor to see if I'm hitting the cylinder. But you do not want to ever dry fire 22s. So I'm going to turn it and just finish this off. I don't want the whole rest of the video be me loading the cylinder. Okay, so now we have a dry fire safe revolver. There's two ways to fire this. You can thumb the hammer back. It's got a nice spur with just a texture on it, so it's easy to get hold of. And you notice the trigger is way back here at the back, but the travel is infinitesimal. It's just a very nice trigger. It's very light and very short trigger. It just happens to be all the way at the back. Now if I let it all the way out and do a double action, the double action is heavy, but it's not ridiculous. And at the back, as I bring it back, it starts to stack a little bit and then all of a sudden cuts loose and goes. So it's a little bit inconsistent in the double action mode. But in single action mode, it's actually a very nice trigger. Very short, very crisp, and very light. The trigger was also a little bit inconsistent in double action mode of where it would actually break. In single action mode, it was very consistent and very reliable. So this is a gun best fired in single action, and especially if you're trying to do target shooting. Now one of the things I noticed, despite this having decent sights with the U-dot, the gun is a little bit unbalanced. Because it's got a longer barrel and it's heavy, it kind of has a tendency to want to wag the barrel. So it's a little bit more difficult to shoot the long one well than it is to shoot the short one well, which is kind of interesting, because you would figure that the longer sight radius would give you a better ability to pull accurate groups. It's just this gun, when you're grabbing it all the way back here and you got all this barrel hanging out there, kind of wants to do that if you're not focused on it, and that can make it difficult to do. Because again, you've got a 6.5 inch barrel, but you're 11.2 inches from the back to the front, so there's a lot of gun going on here. Now, other than that, it was a pleasure to shoot. It was relatively easy to shoot well once you got a proper grip on it that kept the barrel from wagging on it, and I was able to see the sights on this one decently. So I did enjoy shooting it. It was a nice gun to have at a range day. So let's move to the other one. Let's see if I can duplicate, before I do that, see if I can duplicate the ejection problem. No, of course it's going to work smoothly. What would happen is I would push on it and nothing would happen, and then I'd reach in and I'd start flicking rounds out, and they would flick out easily, and then after I flicked enough of them out, then the ejector would work. Now I'll get them all out of there. The stainless steel one is basically the same gun, and I'll talk about some of the dimensions of it while I'm loading it up. But it is 8.8 inches front to back. It has a 4-inch barrel. It's 5.3 inches tall, so it's the same height, the same thickness, it's just a shorter gun. And I did find this one tended to be a little bit more balanced, and it was a little easier to keep the thing on target. Now, with the sights on it, with the blackout rear sight, that part I did find a little more difficult to pull tight groups with. But hammer spur is the same. That same awesome short crisp trigger. This one the trigger seems to be a hair crisper on that, but overall basically the same. And that same long, a little bit stacking at the end and somewhat inconsistent break at the back, but not horrible. So it's not a bad trigger on double action, it's just a little bit inconsistent. But the single action trigger on this one is every bit as nice as the other one. If this were my gun and I were going to keep it, I would probably paint either dots or a U on that to give a little bit more focus. Because one thing I did find with it is the front dots, the front sight fits so tightly inside that box that it's hard to tell if you're off by a little bit unless the target is light colored. So it was just a little bit more difficult to zero it in, but it was more easily controllable. Other than the fact the smoothness of this grip did make it have a tendency, if you didn't get your hand right, it would kind of move in your hand. Not that it would shoot out of your hand from a recoil perspective, because 22 has no recoil, but it did kind of have a tendency to kind of want to wiggle around until you got your hand in the right spot. With the more common rubber grip that you see on them, it stays right where it belongs and it kind of centers in almost automatically. But that rubber grip's not anywhere near as nice looking as this grip. So depending on what you get and what you're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and open this one again, and I'm going to dump out these snap caps. Throw those away, or push them away. Now, to change the cylinder, which is a field strip operation, there's no tools required, you're not modifying anything, it's just a field strip. You just push this button right here. And sometimes it's a little difficult to push it, but once you push it all the way in, the cylinder comes off, and then you would just pick up the other cylinder, or in this case, I'm just going to put back the cylinder that was on it because I'm going to return it. You just slide the cylinder back in. So all I did is I slid it back in. I had to turn it up to look at it because I didn't want to scratch the body, but I just slid it back in here, let go of the pin, and you're back to being a whatever cylinder it is that you happen to put at it. I think this one might have the 22. This one's got the 22 Magnum cylinder in it as well. I'm going to go through that cylinder one more time, see if I can do it a little bit easier on screen. So you push forward the release, push the cylinder out, turn it upside down, push this button, and as you pull it forward, the crane and the cylinder and all will come out together. And then you'll see there's a hole there, and that's where it came out of. I'm going to try to push it back in there, and I'm going to try to line it up where you can see it. It is easy to do when you have it lined up for your face, but it's not so easy to do when I try to do it on camera, and I am pushing this button at various points to get it lined up and snap back into place. It looks more difficult when I've got it turned away from me and not in an optimal position than it really is. You turn it towards you, of course I wouldn't see it on the camera, but you turn it towards you and do it where you're looking right at it. It's actually quite easy. And it is something you can do literally in the field. You can be at the range, take both cylinders with you, and go. Try to resist the temptation to just put the Magnum cylinder in it and shoot both 22LR and Magnum out of it. There are little differences in the frame or the case sizes that could cause some unexpected results, so you do want to use the correct cylinder for what it is you're doing. From an MSRP perspective, this one, surprisingly, the black is less expensive. It is $639.45, kind of an interesting, very detailed MSRP. The bodies on these, the frames and everything are all stainless, whichever one you get, so the black one is just a coating on the stainless. But the stainless one, which is a matte stainless, again, both are stainless underneath. This one is actually where they're doing the polishing right on the stainless itself, is $776.68. Again, another really detailed MSRP. From a durability perspective, both of them have been durable. These guns are older guns. The owner does shoot them and enjoys shooting them. So both of these guns have miles on them, and you can see that there's really no discernible wear on them. Some of the things you're looking on some of the edges where they look white, it isn't. It's just the studio lights shining on the corners. So I could turn it and you'll see that there is no wear on it. The guns are in really good shape. So they've held up well. They've functioned well. They seem to eat just about everything. The only issue that I encountered with them and that he's encountered on occasion is ejecting. Other than that, they're actually quite good guns. So if you're looking for a fun range day gun, you can get this one a little bit on the larger side, or you can get this guy that's a little more compact. Either way, I think you're going to have a fun range day. And they're also good practice guns if you have the Tracker series in one of the larger calibers and you want to practice with the gun, because they're going to fundamentally work the same other than the recoil. They're good for that. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, kind of everywhere. Thank you.
Take your case into the store. Okay? You guys know if you need anything else.